a lot of us find that point in our lives of saying, I feel just dry, and I feel crushed, and I feel defeated, and I feel like there's no hope. And here's what 2 Corinthians has to say for us. For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. But we had this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. Now, that passage right there speaks to us a little bit about what does it mean to be a well of life. I want you to think about what a well is. A well is a hole in the ground. A well is this idea, a spring and a well, spring of water welling up. That's it. A spring and a well are these two things. The well itself is this hole that's stuck in the ground, and a spring is this water that's trapped beneath the surface of rock, dirt, soil, grass, and trees, and everything else. The spring runs beneath, and it's hidden from the world until someone drills a well, and then that water is no longer contained and begins to come up, begins to rise up. In this passage, I want you to pretend for a minute, or imagine for a minute, that we contain in us this water, this well of life, this spring of life that's inside of us. And over time, the dirt and the rocks and the pressures of life begin to crush us, begin to press in upon us. And it begins to keep that spring that's in us from bubbling up. Imagine what happens to a well over time. Eventually, the corrosion and the erosion of things begins to crumble the sides of the well. And if it's not maintained, what happens is the well collapses and the water is once again contained. No longer can you get to that spring that's hidden down deep. A lot of us as Christians, we dig our well and we find that hope, and the spring begins to pour out, and there's water, and there's life coming out for us. But over time, pressures of life begin to crush that well. We have failures. We have a bunch of people who've been walking with Christ longer said, no, you can't do things that way. It's too difficult. It's not the way to go. And a rock or two falls in the well. And then something else happens. We get go through a church split, or if we're in the ministry, we get fired from the ministry, from the church that we're at, and a bunch of more rocks fall down on top of the spring. And before long, it's subtract. And that well of life is just gone. Now, the spring is still there. What we got to do is dig it out. But we also need to recognize that every one of us is like that. God gives us that spring of life, but we are fragile. We get our feelings hurt. We fail. We get hurt physically. We get hurt emotionally. We get hurt spiritually. Every one of us is a jar of clay. And every one of us will be broken, will be covered up, will be crushed. Hard pressed, but not crushed. Every one of us will face in some way, shape, or form something that perplexes us. But we don't have despair about it. We will all be persecuted in some way. We will never be abandoned. And we'll get struck down, we'll get knocked down, we'll get pushed to the ground. But if Christ has our soul, we'll never be destroyed. As I was reading Ezekiel, and as I was listening to the song that we played earlier from David Crowder, so Rick God Give Us Rest, I loved this idea in this song of a man who is looking at life and saying, this world's gotten out of hand. How can we make a difference? How can I make a difference in people's lives? We've messed it up, and I've been a part of that. I've messed up this world too. I've made a mistake. I've screwed up. We've all broken this thing. And the song is very depressing to begin with. It's very much of a letdown. But then there's that turn. And I love music when there's a turn like that. It turns from despair to hope. And it begins to sing, let it shine, let your light shine on us. And there is hope that brims up. It's as if he's digging his well out and the spring is beginning to bubble up before it explodes in an old faithful-like expression of God is my hope, God is my light, God is the light that he has given to us. The light that shines in darkness. I want to tell you right now, this world is messed up. And you and I have done our part in it. We have contributed to it. We have not helped it. And I'm not talking about the fact that, oh, well, there's so much immorality in the world and we just let it go. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we've done our part by not stepping up against injustices. We've done our part by not talking to people that we know are separated from Christ about his love. We've done our part by nodding our heads and laughing at the joke that's made at the kid on the other side of the room that no one likes. I spent this past week subbing a couple days. One day in 5th grade and another day in high school. And I forget just how harsh things can be for kids. I forget just how harsh it can be and how without hope the eyes of some of these young people are because of persecution. We get upset because we have a government that says sometimes maybe you shouldn't put God in the Pledge of Allegiance. And there's debates about that. And I think it's important that we recognize where we come from as a country, but that's not persecution. Not yet. Persecution is when someone takes you and tells you your life is nothing. My daughters had been listening in the car and a Flyleaf song came on called Cassie, about Cassie Bernal and the Columbine massacre, and they've been asking about it. And in fact, it's piqued their curiosity so much that they've asked me to tell the story of what happened at Columbine twice now. And Kenna, our youngest, made the comment, I'm glad those boys are dead. And I said, why? And she said, because if I told them I believed in God, they'd kill me. And on one hand, I'm going, you understand what that means, that you would say to them, I believe in God. But on the other hand, I'm trying to explain to them that it's just as much of a terrible story that those two boys died because they had no hope. And they took others with them. And I don't know if those two boys had ever made a profession of faith, if they'd ever come to the point where they believed God and then renounced it or not. But I would say from what it seems is that they didn't make that profession ever. They never believed. And so it breaks my heart that, yeah, those boys were murderers and they did a vile and detestable thing. But it breaks my heart that they're going to hell. Because somebody who's a Christian maybe never shared love with them. Maybe they did and they just rejected it. I don't know. But when we don't talk to people, when we don't at least go and try to befriend people just for the sake of letting them be loved, we do our part for the messed up world. 2 Corinthians 4 goes on towards the end and says this, therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. I've had bad days where I was like, I don't want to tell anybody about God. I don't want somebody ask me a question. I don't want to talk about it because my day is so bad. I break that. I break that verse when I do that. I let my light momentary troubles cut off not just my eternal hope in that moment, but the possibility of somebody else coming to know that eternal hope and eternal joy. The truth of the matter is that we all need rest sometimes. We all need a chance to take it away, to take a step back, to rejuvenate, to restore ourselves. we all need to cry out at some point, oh great God, give us rest. The truth is that it's given to us as readily as we ask for it. Inwardly, we are being renewed day by day. There are times when we got to stop, take a break, and take a breath. And there are times where that break and that breath means it's time for a fresh start too. Much of what the Gate has been about for the last 4 years is going to stop and take a rest next week. Next week we are going to, as a church, say goodbye. We're not going to go elaborate. We're not going to have a funeral for the Gate, because much of what the Gate is about is its theology and its meeting in a bar and the symbology of its name being this place of transition for people. Those things aren't changing. And the people who are here right now that are going to shape it, that they're still here. That's the heartbeat of the Gate. So we're not killing the church. It's not dying. It's taking a rest. It's going to lay down. It's going to hibernate for the summer. I personally would like to hibernate for the summer. I prefer whatever. We're going to hibernate, and while we're hibernating, we're going to repair some things that are broken, and we're going to improve some things that work really well, and we're going to cut off some things that are useless, and we're going to add on things that are useful. And it's only going to work if, as we rest together as a church, we dream. We ask God, like Ezekiel did, breathe on us. Breathe your inspiration on us. Breathe your hope on us. Bring your ideas to us. Because life for us as individuals only comes from God. Life for us as a church only comes from God. The Gate will live on only so long as God gives us breath. And the funny thing about it is that in the last few weeks, I've been feeling the breath of God more and more and more when it comes to this church than I have in maybe a year. And I think that's awesome. I think God is saying that what's going to happen this summer is going to prepare us. And we may come back next fall and it may be 5 people scattered out here. Or it may be something huge. Or it may be something in between. It may be something we have no idea what it is. But one of the things that God has taught me is that through going through the struggles that I've had lately of losing my job and not knowing about money is that God will provide a way. It's just not going to look like what you think it is when it comes along. I had no idea that Kristen would be getting a full-time subbing position as a 5th and 6th grade music teacher because she had no interest in doing anything above 4th grade. Yet here she has this position. And God provided. I had no idea that somebody was going to randomly send a $500 check to us who didn't even know that I lost my job, saying, use it for your family or whatever. God is providing. It's just, I didn't expect that God was going to provide by me getting fired. Sometimes God has to kill us and make us bones so that he can put our flesh back on, put our tendons back on, and stand us up and breathe life into us. Sometimes we have to be in that place where we feel pressed and crushed, that we have perplexed ideas of things, and we give in to despair. Sometimes we get to that point where we are dead, and God says, stand up and breathe. Here is life. Now go and live. God's promise to Israel was, I'm going to bring you back together after I've scattered you, and I'm going to build you up, and I'm going to give you life, and you are going to change the world. God's message to the church was, I'm going to take Jesus, and I'm going to tear him down, and I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to lay him in a grave, and he's going to rest for 3 days, and then he's going to come back, and he's going to change the world. His message to the church was, you're going to gather all together in one place, and you're going to begin to understand each other in new ways, and you're going to come together and have everything in common. You're going to hang out there for a few days, and you're going to enjoy that. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to send persecution, and you're going to scatter to the points of the world, and then you're going to build in a way you never imagined. And God is saying to the Gate tonight, next week, you're going to come together one last time before the summer and have worship here in Hurricane Harry's. Then you're going to scatter. Some of you are going to go off to internships, and some of you are going to go off to grad schools, and some of you are going to go off for summer projects, and some of you are going to be right here sitting with us on Wednesday nights and some Sunday nights planning and praying and seeking what God's will is for the Gate. And some of you are going to be sending us emails and saying, hey, here's an idea, this is what I thought, or I'm going to give you a call, or whatever it is. Some of you You may graduate, walk out, and we won't see you again.